gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin. This is my co-host Teddy, and today we're going to be doing a showdown with two RX480s in CrossFire against a single Founders Edition GTX1080. So this one will be quite interesting. I mean, a lot of people have already done this before because it was something AMD was going on about with all the events leading up to the release of the 480. But, you know, there's been a few driver changes on both sides, especially a major one with the 480 to address its power issue. So I think it'd be quite interesting just to see how it's going. The other 480 is still in my rig for some additional testing before I do the showdown with the 1060. So I'm quite interested. I was quite interested to see how this would go. However, I will say straight away that I did run into some trouble with the RX480 CrossFire, which I'll highlight a bit more once we get to the benchmarking. Before all that, let's talk about what GPUs you'll find in each of these graphics cards. So in the RX480, you'll find the 14nm Polaris 10 GPU, and in the GTX1080, you'll find the 16nm GP104 GPU. That means you're going to be getting 2,304 cores on the RX480 per GPU. And on the 1080 you get 2,560 CUDA cores. TDP wise, 150 watt TDP for the RX480, although you have two of them, so keep that in mind, compared to 180 watt TDP for the 1080. Memory wise, so you're getting pretty standard memory on the RX480. It's 8 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory at 8,000 megahertz. Whereas on the 1080, I should say, you're getting 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X, always a tongue twister, which is double the data rate, and that's at 10,000 megahertz. So a big jump up there in terms of the memory for the 1080 over the RX480. So let's briefly talk about the coolers. So on the RX480, you're getting AMD's new reference design cooler. It's pretty plastic fantastic, but you know, it's decent. It's a big upgrade over the one they use for the reference R9 290X and 290, million times better than that. So that's really good, but it is still quite basic there, and it doesn't have a backplate. On the GTX 1080, you're getting their new, what they call it, Founders, but it's just essentially a reference design card. This is the same cooler they used all the way back on the Titan. It's just been upgraded over time. Now this one has had a bit of upgrades done to it. Of course, it's a lot more angular now, but also it's much quieter, and they've made a few more fine-tuning things like that. So that's really good as well. This cooler's come a long way since we first saw it all the way back when the Titan first launched. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the benchmarks. So a lot of reviewers will tell you you're always better off going with a single card rather than, you know, dual cards in SLI or Crossfire, because, you know, it's just way easier. You don't have a lot of the problems associated with running two graphics cards, and that was evident with the RX480s and Crossfire for me. So I'm only actually going to be showing you guys 3 benchmarks. That's because either the other benchmarks I do not support Crossfire, or I was having big trouble with the RX480s to actually run the benchmarks. Now, even games I don't benchmark that I just play normally, such as Rocket League and Overwatch, we're having trouble with the RX480s. So yeah, I mean, Rocket League especially, there was artifacting, the colors were going crazy, it looked like an LSD trip. So yeah, that just wasn't good, you know, at all. And that's sort of the problem a lot of people have with dual graphics cards. Now, it could just be that the drivers are still very new for the RX480, and it needs time to sort of get there. So I'm not going to hold it against it too much, but it is just something you will need to keep in mind. And it's not just for the RX480, that goes for all graphics cards. You're always better off going with a single, more powerful graphics card than two lesser powerful ones. With all that out of the way, let's jump to the benchmarks and see how they did. So pretty clear results there across the board. These cards are obviously running at their stock speeds, which mean the RX480s were running at 1266 MHz on their boost clock, and with GPU boost 3.0, the GTX1080 here went all the way up to a spectacular amount of, is about 1900 megahertz. So, you know, that's pretty decent. It was like 1898, you know, more or less 1900. So yeah, you know, it's expected that the 1080 should do better. And it did. But those numbers don't really tell the whole story. As I said before, there's a lot of problems associated with dual graphics cards, which is why generally I don't do showdowns featuring both of them, but in this case I felt like I had to. But yeah, in terms of benchmarks, win there for the 1080, hands down. The RX480 did stay quite close and actually beat it in some of them, but it's still a win there. The 1080 consistently did better, and you know, obviously it could do all the games I usually benchmark, whereas the RX480 on the other hand, with the lack of CrossFire support in some of them, I actually couldn't even benchmark them. So yeah. However, benchmarks aren't everything. What about the temperatures? So both these cards are pretty hot running. I think that's mainly due to the coolers they're attached to. Also, I mean, they're somewhat hot running GPUs themselves. But yeah, temperatures wise, how did they do? So the 1080 has a temperature limit of 82 degrees Celsius, and that's what I saw it go up to. So nothing really majorly big there. It just went up to its standard 82 degrees Celsius, and then it'll start to throttle itself and hold itself there. The RX480s, on the other hand, went a bit higher than that. They like to sit around the 85 degrees Celsius mark. That's still fine. I mean, anything in the 80 degree mark is okay. Maybe it's a little bit not okay once you start getting to the higher 80s. But yeah, it's you know, that's still decent. Both of these cards will be throttling though, which is something to keep in mind. They will lower their clock speeds to help bring temperatures down. So, you know, that's always the downfall of a reference design usually, and aftermarket SKUs probably will not have that issue, so you'll get a bit of a performance bump there just because the cards aren't throttling. Now let's move over to noise then, and how noisy were these cards? So the RX480s and CrossFire were exactly the same noise-wise as a single RX480, so I didn't even bother to try, you know, filming them with two of them in it. It's exactly the same. So if you have a single RX480 and you're wondering noise-wise if it'll be much worse if you're running two of them, unless your case is really, really, really bad airflow, it should be pretty much the same. These are a blower style, so they're not exhausting the hot air into the case for the other card to suck up. They will suck it in from the back here, and then they exhaust it out the back of the case here. So that's quite good in that when you're running two of these graphics cards, they will get all the hot air out of the case. But as always, I'll let you guys judge for yourself. So I'll show you what the RX480 sounded like first during the benchmark, and then the GTX1080 afterwards. So yeah, you can see a bit of a difference there. Temp-wise, I got to give it to the GTX1080. Just generally, it was a bit quieter of a graphics card. I think that's a little bit to be expected, just because this cooler itself is much bigger than the one you get on the 480, and also much better built. But yeah, still a win there for the 1080 over the RX480. The RX480 definitely isn't loud. As I said, big improvement over previous AMD reference designs, so that's really good. And with two of them in there, at least with reference designs, they exhaust all the hot air out the back of the case, so you won't have to worry about you know, one card feeding hot air to the other card. Which brings us now to the conclusion. And what do I make of this showdown? So this one is a bit funny for me. It was a bit funny of a showdown in general because we couldn't test everything we normally test just because of the limitations right now with this graphics card. So price-wise in New Zealand, if you're getting two RX480s, reference ones like these from Playtech, it's going to set you back about $1,000. Whereas a Founders Edition 1080 like this one I have right here will set you back about $1,300. So it's about $300 more expensive. Now the main benefit a lot of people will tell you is that with dual graphics cards, it means that you don't need to front all that money all at once. You can just buy one now, you know, play games for a few months, and then when you've got enough money again, you can add another one in. And that is a very, very good point to make. However, in terms of this Showdown, it's very, very hard to say because, you know, they both have their benefits. And normally I don't like talking about graphics cards outside of the two that we're showdowning, or three in this case. But it really has to be said this time. If you are in the market and you were actually thinking, oh, should I go, you know, 480 CrossFire, or should I go for a single 1080? Honestly, I'd probably just straight up say go for just a single 1070. That's because in New Zealand it'll run you maybe $100 or maybe in some cases $200 cheaper than dual RX480s, and they're a fantastic graphics card. Yes, the 1080 will be more powerful than the 1070 because there's more CUDA cores and much faster memory. However, the 1070 is still a hell of a graphics card, and you know, it's just going to do you for everything you need. I just cannot see a situation where I wouldn't recommend it over either of these two graphics cards, honestly, guys. So if you were deciding, I would say maybe just take a look at a single 1070, and I think that would do you a lot better. However, if you're just dead set on either one of these, and I had to say either way, I would probably say the single 1080. Now that is because I would rather just have a single graphics card. Honestly, I would just rather have this single one graphics card and forget about all the trouble you have with CrossFire. Now, you can still do the 480 CrossFire. I'm not selling it that short, and it will get better with driver improvements. So that's good. And a single 480, in terms of price to performance, is a hell of a graphics card. This thing puts out so many frames for how much it costs. So, as I said, it's very, very hard for me to call it. This is something you're going to need to make your mind up yourself, because everybody's situation is different in terms of, you know, what resolution they're playing at, what games they're playing, how much money they want to spend, and things like that. So that's the best way. I can just lay it out, all the facts for you like that, and sort of let you guys judge for yourself. And of course, pricing is going to be different depending on where you live in the world. Now, I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Tech Showdown if you enjoy videos like these and you want to see more showdowns in the future. When I see all the subs, you know, coming in, it really gives me a lot of motivation to keep making the videos, because it shows me that, you know, you guys really, really enjoy what I'm doing. So definitely hit that subscribe button, and as always, I'll see you guys next time.